You're watching TelecomTV from the MEF annual members meeting in Boston. And I'm joined now by Chris Purdy, who is CTO of CENX. Chris, good to talk to you again. In the about 9 months since we last spoke, which was at the industry event in Dallas, the Gen 15 event, there's been a lot of work going on in the industry and by the MEF. What's the current status of the MEF's LSO work?
Well, having the LSO Reference Architecture actually published and out now, I think is the first big starting point. What that does is it's defining the major components, it's defining the major interfaces, both the interactions between service providers so that services can cross those service providers, and in some cases defining interfaces that happen from LSO to other elements, both northbound and southbound. And so I think that reference architecture is locking everything down, and now what's happening is there's just a tremendous amount of work going on at MEF to define the information models that those interfaces will use, to begin specifying those interfaces and trying to effectively define standards that could allow for interoperability between all the different components.
And given the amount of work that's going on by the MEF and its members on LSO, why is that important for service providers?
Well, I think what happens today is that everything is all customized implementations, and so you end up with customized way of ordering from every service provider and customized ways of knowing the operational state of services from every service providers. And so what ends up happening is that for everybody to set up their operations, they all have to build a unique solution. And by defining these standards with open interfaces, it essentially allows one company to build something once and use it many times, and as a result can dramatically lower the cost and improve the timeline to actually get these services available and out in the market.
And how, as an industry, do we go about ensuring full service assurance within the LSO framework?
So I think service assurance is actually an area where the industry hasn't focused as much, especially with the whole network virtualization thing that's gone on. Everybody's been investing in figuring out how to spin up new VMs, spin up new VFs, integrate those VNFs in, etc. And not as much time on assuring services across a combined physical and virtualized infrastructure. And I think what's happening is now everybody's kind of starting to put these things in production, and they're saying, okay, wait a minute, I can now turn them on, but how do I ensure that they're in place? And I think what the LSO framework is trying to do is understand, what the components are and how will it get all of that data. If you look at the LSO, a large portion of what they mean by lifecycle service orchestration is the assurance part, not just the fulfillment. And so trying to ensure those services in a consistent way across combined physical and virtualized infrastructure is a massive challenge for service providers that really needs to be addressed.
So big challenge that needs to be addressed. How is the MEF structuring itself to go about helping here?
So I think what it's all about is the interfaces. If you have a standardized, here's an example. So let's say that I'm a mobile operator and I have 50,000 cell sites, and so I'm having to buy carrier Ethernet services to reach all my cell sites. Well, I want to do service assurance of that. And so I've got to, first of all, I'm going to be running maybe my own service OEM code so I can measure performance across. But in addition, I want all of my different service providers to give me their assessment of their SLA performance. Are they meeting their delay variation, frame loss criteria? Well, if every one of those service providers gives me their data in a unique format with unique definitions and unique terminology, then I somehow have to integrate all that and make it all work together. And that's expensive, time-consuming, and really isn't adding value. If, on the other hand, the MEF can define that interface and make that standard and get those standards adopted, which is actually one of the hardest challenges here, then all those service providers would be sending me the data in the same format, in the same intervals, with the same definition of terms, and it just works. And I think that's just one example of how service assurance would take place.
So in defining these frameworks, getting the standards adopted, Does the MEF have to coordinate with other standards bodies and associations and organisations to do this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a big part of what's happening at MEF, and I think a lot of the work is done by people who attend multiple forums. What's happening in the industry while LSO is being introduced is the whole virtualization's happening, the SD-WAN thing is happening, and so you're seeing a lot of different organizations coming together. And when it comes to ultimately assuring services across those networks or orchestrating across those networks in general, there's all of those things have to come together and work together. So there's a lot of work between the standards bodies to make sure that all the trends come together in a working solution.
Excellent. Well, Chris, for now, thank you very much indeed.
Good. Thank you.